pleased you can join us. Just to let you know, the meeting is now being recorded, if that just popped up on your screens. And then just a couple more housekeeping things before we get started. So you're probably all used to this by now, but just to remind you, please make sure your microphones are on mute when we have our fabulous speaker. But at times, you know, there are going to be some interactive bits, I believe. So do unmute them when necessary. If you've got any questions or feedback, just please pop it in the chat room and we'll be keeping an eye on that throughout. And just a reminder as well, please note about expressing personal views. So Mindy's just going to pop a bit of a reminder in the chat. So please make sure you have a read of that before we get started. I'm not going to keep you too long because we've got a fabulous presentation, which I'm really excited to listen to. Sudhir's presentation is being recorded for the CSP website. So if you want to turn your camera off, if you don't want to be seen, that's fine. But we would love to see your faces because it's always much nicer to see who you're talking to. So please do keep them on if you can. But we're not going to record the discussion afterwards, just so hopefully everyone is happy and free to have a really good conversation. Final little thing, so if you are on social media, please use it and spread the word of what we're talking about tonight. So please use the tweet at CSP South Central and then also our at CSP LGBTQIA+ handles. So without any further ado, tonight is peeling back the professional physio persona, power, privilege and positionality. And I'm going to hand over to Sudhir.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Hayley, for the introduction. I'm just going to share my screen with you. So hopefully now you should all see the PowerPoint presentation coming through. So as Hayley said, I'm Sudhir Daya. My pronouns are he, him. I'm chair of the CSP's LGBTQI+ network. I work in London in a private practice, integrated health, and I also run the Life Architect, which is a human potential consultancy looking at coaching, training, facilitating, as well as it runs the Man I Cure project, which explores structural patriarchy. So tonight we will be looking at peeling back the professional physio persona. That's a lot of P's. I like alliterations. Keeps us on our toes. Power, privilege, and positionality. Some housekeeping. We all approach this material very differently. Some of us are regarding equality, diversity, inclusivity, all these words. Some of us have done tons of reading of it. Some of us are really coming new to it. So just being mindful and respectful of that. And I'm really hoping to have a discussion with exercise and activities that I'd like to give you, rather than me giving you a very one-way lecture, because I don't feel that's very helpful. So I hope we can have a honest conversation and honest questions that are meaningful, rather than being scared of saying anything wrong or being potentially offensive. Is rather just creating a safe space so we can have a conversation. The structure of my presentation, we'll start with the 4P model that I have made, and we'll then explore positionality, power, privilege, all in relation specifically to the LGBTQIA+ community. So just bearing that in mind, I won't be really addressing BAME so much, and I won't be addressing disability. So just to contextualize that for you, we'll bring it into how it pans out into our physiotherapy world, and we'll talk about allyship in the end. Feel free to put questions as we go through, and we can have a chat in the end. Okay, so I made this 4P model, and I just briefly introduce you to it because it has been really helpful and will be the kind of skeleton and backbone of our talk. So it starts with you as the person, you as the professional physiotherapist working with clients, and then the profession of physiotherapy, and how all these domains are bidirectionally related, and how they all sit within a social context. And just wanted to use that as our starting point. I'd now like to invite you to start looking at ourselves. So this, we're going to start with the person. So you may need a pen and paper for this, just to help you make notes and do some of the activities as we go through. So I'd like to invite you to look at this positionality. Who are you? So here I've got a little stick person, okay? And this activity is really for your reflection. We're not going to be sharing about it. So it's really just for your own personal development and self-consumption and reflection. So we start off with an interesting question. What organs and body parts do you see when you look at your pelvic region? So you don't have to put it in the chat box, please. You know what I mean? Just write it down for yourself on a piece of paper. It's giving you a moment to do that. Okay. Next, I'd like you to think about how would you define your gender? So write something down on your little piece of paper. Great. And now, how do you express that gender you just wrote down in your clothing, in your mannerisms, in your hobbies, in the activities you do, etc., etc.? So take a few moments just to write some things down. Great. Now I want you to think of a celebrity who you really, really fancy. And I want you to take a moment and write that celebrity's name down. It can be someone on telly, someone in the movies. It can be a sports person. It can be a politician, I know. But just take a while to write down somebody who you really, really fancy, you know? Oh. Great. So thank you for that. You can write more celebrities if you want to, not just one. So thanks for doing that little activity. And I just want to use that activity to explore it a little bit more with you. So the first question I asked you was about what organs and body parts do you see when you look at your pelvic region? That really relates to your biological sex and your anatomy, your genitalia, your hormones, your chromosomes, your genetics. And really, we can see that everything here is on a spectrum. We have female on one end of the spectrum, male on the other, and intersex in the middle. And when I think of intersex, I think of the South African athlete, Caster Semenya, who's won many gold medals in the Olympics, where from what I've read, she is a female with highly elevated testosterone levels. So the next question we looked at was, how do you describe your gender? So gender, once again, sits on a spectrum. Well, on one end of the spectrum, we have woman, and on the other end of the spectrum, we have man. And in the middle, we have this word non-binary, which means they don't, and it's often used interchangeably with other words such as gender fluid, gender neutral, where if you don't see the binary social construct of distinctly man, distinctly woman. Remember, we're thinking of a spectrum. So if you think about colors and black and white, we're really looking for the grays. And some other terminology that may be useful is cisgender and transgender. So cis literally has a Latin root, as most of our English languages, that means on this side, and trans means on the other side. So for example, I have male anatomy and I identify and I see myself as a man. So because there's correlation between those two, I am cisgender, okay? If you are have female anatomy and you identify and see yourself as a woman, then you are cisgender. But if you are male with male anatomy, but you see yourself and you in a different way, either as a woman or as non-binary, then you'll be you'll regard yourself as transgender. And now we're going to move on to gender expression. And this is how we behave, perform, how all the things we do in our mannerisms and activities. And once again, we have a spectrum. On the one end, we have masculine, and the other end, we have feminine, and we have androgynous in the middle. So I'd like to take a pause over here, okay? And just if anybody has a question, then feel free to ask. You can either pop it in a chat box or you can come off camera. And if you don't have any questions, then I'd just like to invite you to think of someone who is a male, who identifies as a male, and expresses themselves in a feminine way. What words come to mind when you think of a man, of someone with male anatomy, who identifies as a man, but behaves in a very feminine way? If you're feeling brave and courageous, you can use the chat box, or you can just kind of write it down for yourself. So, yeah, exactly. That's kind of exactly the first word that comes to mind is camp. And for me, I don't know why, I think of Michael McIntyre, the comedian. You know, he's got family and kids, and he even it's part of his skit. You know how like he is. He even talks about how he's so camp. Yes, these are great words: flamboyant, theatrical. Love it, love it. I love it. Great words there. Okay, so thank you for that, everybody. Now, let's have another scenario. If someone sees themselves as female, so rather has female anatomy, sees themselves as a woman, and behaves in a masculine way, then what words come to your mind now? Yep, great. Yep. One I often come across is tomboy. And we often think of that. Great, thanks for that, everybody. Now another scenario. What if someone is male in their anatomy, sees themselves as non-binary, and behaves in an androgynous way? Now what words come to mind? A little bit more tricky. Okay? I'll be brave and probably say, yeah. Sometimes we even say, and no judgment or no being, but sometimes we just say, ooh, they're a bit weird. Or sometimes we even use the word, sometimes we just don't know, you know? So, yeah. And I think of this regard, I think of Eddie Izzard, the actor and comedian and performer, you know, who's just come out as gender fluid, gender neutral. And now here's another scenario. So thank you for working with me with this. Now, if someone has male anatomy, sees themselves as male, and yet only dresses in a feminine way, what words come to our mind now? Yeah. For me, cross-dresser comes to mind. Yeah, exactly. Thanks, Haley. Thank you for that. Now, I've given you kind of 4 scenarios there. Yeah, Grayson Perry, he's famous as well. I've given you 4 scenarios there, and I'm curious for each of those scenarios, I wonder what assumptions we make about their sexual orientation. So in the first scenario, we had a male who identifies as man and yet expresses themselves in a feminine way, and we had like camp theatrical. What assumption do we make about that person's sexual orientation? Yeah, exactly. Exactly, Ian. Thanks for that share. So we're going to move on now to sexual orientation, and that's the who do you really fancy bit. Okay. And here we have lesbian, gay, bisexual, pansexual, asexual, questioning, and heterosexual. So just for clarity, so we have hetero being opposite and homo being same. So we have lesbians are two females who identify as women and who are attracted to each other. Gay are two males who identify as man who are attracted to each other. Bi is attracted to both male and female. Pan is not bounded by biological sex and or gender. Asexuals are less interested in the physical act of sex per se. Questioning people don't have a category yet, and maybe they don't want to be categorized. Maybe they're just figuring it out and they're still exploring. And by no means is this an exhaustive list. And then finally, of course, we have heterosexual, which is a cisgendered male attracted to a cisgendered female. So just to summarize, because sometimes this can be confusing, I am a gay cisgender male. Okay, so take a moment, maybe just to write down. Yeah, good question, Sally. Gay also has an interesting one because it becomes an umbrella term for the whole community. So there's words that sometimes can be a bit confusing because gay also has a kind of real umbrella term for the whole community. So I hear you, it can become a little bit confusing as well. So take a moment now on your piece of paper and write down your positionality, starting with I am. So like I said, I am gay, that's my sexual orientation. I'm cisgender, which is my gender, and my male, which is my assigned sex, biological sex. Just take a moment to write down your positionality. Yeah. Yeah, no, thanks, Ian. I also, a lot of my friends also use the word lesbian, but I think we live in such a changing world that people are using terms that they feel more comfortable with. Yeah. Great. So thank you, everybody, for that. Now I'd like to, now that we've identified your positionality from an LGBTQI plus perspective, I'd like to move on to privilege. So for those who are men in the audience, I'd like you to, either in the chat box or your piece of paper, take a moment and share with us what challenges you face specifically related to being a male in our current society. So what challenges do you face specifically related to being a male in our society? So I expected silence in the chat box. That was an intentional question. And now I'm expecting more silence for the women in the audience. What benefits do you specifically receive related to being a female in our society? Okay, yeah, more likely to get custody, free to express emotions. Yes, and now it gets interesting. So now I'm going to ask another provocative question to the women in the room. In our current society, what issues, barriers, and challenges do you face in your everyday life specifically related to being a woman? The chat box should go wild now and should just literally blow up. Yeah. Mindy, exactly. You know, so the question I'm really driving to point out is, which gender has the most privilege in our society? Yeah. Yeah, there's a point we can go on the whole night. Well, just the chat box will keep on filling up. So really for me, to keep it simple, because sometimes we get so bound by all these words, you know, privilege is nothing but unearned advantage or benefit. You didn't work for it, you just got it. It's not your fault, okay? You didn't do anything right or wrong, good or bad. You just have it. Huh? And so this might, for some of us, stir up some many emotions, and they might surface either before, during or after the talk, and that's okay. There's material worth exploring there, but it's nothing but unearned advantage. I wanted you to indulge me, and I just wanted to drill this point home a little bit about unhomed advantage. A 2-minute clip, if you entertain me. Most of you will probably have heard it.
We can't hear the sounds, dear.
Ah. But you know why? Because it's going through my headphones. So I will remove my headphones. Thanks, Ian.
Here's your tea. Are you feeling a bit better?
Not really, no.
Okay, well, can you describe the man who mugged you?
He was about 5'10", short, dark hair. He put a knife to my throat and he demanded my phone and my watch.
And were you wearing what you're wearing now?
Sorry?
Is this what you were wearing when it happened?
Yes, but...
You look quite provocatively wealthy.
Look, I failed to see how what I wear has any...
Well, just a bit of an invitation, isn't it? Like you're advertising it.
Look,
you seem distressed. I'm going to bring one of our counsellors in. This gentleman's a bit upset. He was mugged earlier.
Oh dear. Had you been drinking?
Yes, because if you've had a drink, it can send out confusing signals. Lead somebody on with a nice suit and the phone, and then at the last minute say, I don't want to be mugged.
he put a knife to my throat and he demanded my possessions.
And you just gave them to him.
Did you even scream?
See, how is somebody to know that you don't enjoy handing over your possessions unless you make your intentions clear?
No, I didn't scream. He had a knife. I was really scared.
And we're very sympathetic, but I'm afraid you're going to have to accept some of the responsibility for this. Come in.
Are you going to be much longer? I've got a gentleman out here who says he's been receiving abusive emails for months.
Ask him what font he's been using. If it's something coquettish like Helvetica, then he's probably bought it on himself.
Okay.
So thank you for letting me play that video. Yeah, maybe take a moment to share what comes up. It was intention. It was really to highlight the reverse orientation of privilege in our society and to drive that point home. And if anything comes to mind, then please feel free to share it. And in the interim, I'm just going to go to the next one and relate it specifically to the LGBTQIA plus community. And this is a 2021 hate crime report in the UK. And so they surveyed over 1,000 people in the UK, and you can see the stats over there, quite shocking. If you look at 9 out of 10 people have experienced verbal abuse, 3 out of 10 have been subject to physical violence, and 2 in 10 experience sexual violence. So this relates to privilege and what are the benefits of being heterosexual, cisgender, and male in our current society. Let's not even add all the other factors, you know what I mean, able-bodied, white, etc. We'll just keep it very much focused to the LGBTQI plus community. Now, privilege is intimately connected with power. And to talk about power, I'm just gonna jump us in the model now to place. So we explored person first, and now I'd like to explore place, which is society at large. What do all of these people in these photos have in common, given what we've just been talking about from an LGBTQIA plus perspective? Yeah, white male. Tell me more. What are we gonna, well, we don't have to assume because they're public figures. So what is their sexual orientation? We know I've chosen public. What is their gender identity? Yeah. Yeah. So there we have it, you know, older, white, male, cisgender, heterosexual, in all positions of power. And really, that's the point I wanted to drive home and illustrate quite clearly here, that power is nothing about resource and decision making. They have access to resource and can make decisions that have influence and impact. Okay, and we can see who sits in our social systems, political, legal, religious, economic, social. We can see who the dominant demographic is when we look around the room. So we know where the power resides, the decision making, the resource, and closely tied to that, the privilege and benefit. So let's now explore what are the perks of power, because sometimes we doesn't really land. So the first benefit of someone in power is normality. I am the default. I am the starting point. I am the epicenter. So for example, if I'm a male in our patriarchal society, everything revolves around maleness. Think about a registration form that you fill in anywhere you go to in the world. A female has how many ways to describe herself in relation to a man? Miss, Mrs., Ms. So it shows you where the starting point is. You can take that same power and move it to sexual orientation. You can move it to gender, and you can see how the starting point, the default is cisgender, the default is heterosexual.
That's a great pleasure, James. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Someone's joining us.
I'm just trying to find whoever it is. Can you mute your microphone, please? I'm just trying to find who it is.
You can have this one.
Hang on, there we go. Muted. Carry on, Sudhir. Sorry about that.
That's great. I love it. The second benefit is the benefit of the doubt. This is an interesting one because we have to sit and let it really think with us and land with us as we go. No, who doesn't get questioned? You know, oh yeah, of course they're right. You know, it doesn't even get, and you think about that little subtle but yet very, very impactful power or perk of power. Yeah, that one will land on you for a while. You put a, there's so many examples. You put a male and a female in a room, who's gonna get benefit of the doubt? You know what I mean? Oh, you go into a store, something's missing from the store. You know what I mean? There's so many interesting examples where you can think about, you know, and we can use this for race, for ability, for so many other domains. And finally, this is one, the compounded and accumulated historical benefit of power. So if I'm a CEO, for example, well, all the other previous CEOs have been men. All the other previous CEOs have been straight. All the other previous CEOs have been cisgender. So I've got all that I stand on, you know what I mean? So I just wanted to share with you there the benefits of power and privilege. So how does this all relate to us as a physiotherapy profession? So earlier I asked you all to put your specialities in the chat box. So thank you for doing that. I saw MSK and a variety of other ones, orthopedics, etc., etc. Now what I'd like you to take a moment to and put in the chat box is, can you put in the chat box a role model, a guru, a teacher, someone within the field who you admire or whose work really interests you? So I'm just going to pull, if you're in academia, maybe Dr. Mal Stewart's work appeals to you. If you're into pain, then there's David Butler and Lorimer Moseley. If you're into neuro, you know, we all have like people enough. If you're in acupuncture, for example, I teach acupuncture. So there's Helene Langeveen who's doing interesting fascial research. So we all have like people, just like all these people doing interesting stuff within our own profession. Great, lovely. Now, so thank you for sharing that. Now I'd like you to continue coming to this and all your things. Now I'd like you to write down a role model who is openly identifies as belonging to the LGBTQIA plus community. Oh yeah. The stillness is intentional. Okay, I'm surprised we even got, you know, oh, we've got more people. Great. You know what I mean? Wonderful, wonderful. So I was surprised. I don't think we're going to get that many. So great. Yeah, Darren, John, Rachel, Holly, all of them, Ian, all of them. Ah. Thanks. And what I'm really trying to drive home here and make a point is, if there's a lack of visibility and representation within our own profession, what message does that convey about us as a physio profession? How, you know, because sometimes we have all these charters and sometimes we can talk the talk, but when we kind of look at it and we go, ooh, you know, what is it about people in our own profession that they are not openly out and openly identifying as LGBTQIA+. And that is rich material that I'm hoping will uncover, you know, in the VP UK talk networking session that I'm doing later in the year. So now I'd like to move on to, what does this all mean for us as professionals? So I'd like to imagine yourself in your staff room, whatever sector you're working, whatever you work in. Maybe you work as independent, so you're all alone in a private setting. So sorry if this exercise doesn't land with you so well. But I want you to just imagine you in your staff room and everybody's chatting and bantering. And I wonder if you could tell me some of the common topics that come up within communal group discussion within the staff room. Yep, thanks for that, Leila. Yep. What are some of the topics? You know, yep, cooking, family life, children, yep, TV, great. Sport, of course. I think sports, everyone, like, you know, I think there was tennis over the weekend or whenever. Great. So I'd say there are many like common themes, you know, family, kids, marriage, sport, TV shows, great. And it's just, we'll come back to all these points that I'm making later on as we progress to the talk. You know, it's just kind of bringing up all the themes that come up. I now wanted to move on to allyship. And I want you to imagine, once again, a different scenario, but similar to what we just did. I want you to imagine that you are junior, whatever your stage of a career you're in, you may need to go to the past and use your imagination for this. You know, you're starting a new job, you're a bit junior, it's your first day, you know, and you are kind of now coming to the staff room, coffee break, and everyone's bantering and you're there. What are some of the emotions that come up for you as you think about this being your first day, being new to the team, not knowing anybody else, and everybody in the staff room is kind of chatting? What feelings, thoughts, and emotions are coming up for you as you're in this scenario? Yep. Anxious. Yep. You know. Yep. Great. Hesitant. Yep. Wanting to fit in. Yep. What do I say? Like, how does it all work here? You know, who's the senior people? You know what I mean? Like, who's the team leader? You know. Yeah, and then also I'm curious to know how we behave in those situations. You know, do we initiate conversation? Do other people, yep, all the group dynamics, or do other people want to come and talk to us? Yeah. And I think we've all had an experience of in our life of not belonging. Or not feeling included, or feeling a bit not like we're fitting in. And I think for me, high school is like the perfect petri dish and microcosm to illustrate all of that, you know. I don't know about you, but in high school, I often felt like there was always the in and out groups. There were always the cool kids, you know what I mean? Like the super cool kid. And I have memories of like, oh God, I'm gonna be the person to be picked last to join the team in some kind of team sport activity, you know? So really what I want to illustrate is sometimes we go on about allyship, but really we all in our heart have held the feeling and experience of being excluded. We know what it's like not to belong. We know what it's like to be out on the sideline, you know, left till the last. And I think that as human beings, we all are very social creatures and we value connection. And I think for me, there in the heart of it lies allyship for me, that connection. This is a quote and definition, if you want to, from Banseca. I just liked how it's not about Instagrammable moments and how it's the quiet, consistent form of daily work, where there's no necessary credit or applause, you know, and even notice on the groups you're supposed to be helping. I often think of it like a skill. Do you know what I mean? Like maybe driving, where you know you're quite, maybe not even like driving, maybe even it's a physio skill. You know, you quietly do your self-reading and then you show it to the client. You know what I mean? In the form of when they ask you a difficult question. Maybe it's I'm practicing rollerblading at the moment. You know, so I'm like practicing and quietly by myself, no one showed, and then one day I'll be able to be better and better. And there's something about that quiet, consistent practice rather than the optical tokenism associated with Instagram and those type of things that appeals to me. I wanted us to explore now allyship on the 4 Ps that we talked about earlier. And I wanted you to start with thinking about it from a personal level. And you can think about things from your own family relations and friends. And I don't really want to give you a recipe for allyship because I don't believe there is one. I think there's tons of resources which I will point you to, and they'll give you 20 ways to be a great ally to the LGBTQIA+ community. And that's great. I'm not against those lists. I just think if we all experience on a human level what it feels like to be excluded, sidelined, and not belong, then surely allyship is just the very opposite of that behavior. And do we really need a 20-point checklist on to make other people feel connected when we know in our hearts and lived experience what it feels like not to be connected and sidelined and marginalized. So on a personal level, this is within your personal family relationship. Maybe you spend a moment, you want to share it in a chat box, put some things down. What comes to mind about ways that you can be an ally? Because we can all learn from each other, and I don't think I necessarily have all the answers. I have some things, but I think for me, one thing that I think stands out is talking openly about LGBTQI plus loved ones and their lives. That's one thing I've noticed, that sometimes there's families, for whatever reason, have shame or whatever other emotion associated with and it's talking openly about family members who are LGBTQI plus. Some of the other things that come to mind are creating social settings where straight, cisgendered people can come together with, LGBTQI plus community. So maybe it's your birthday party, maybe it's, I don't know, whatever social event you're trying to do. Maybe you want to include your partners when you do that social invitation and just say, hey, why don't you bring your partner along? Using inclusive language like partner rather than gendering or pre-assuming someone's partner. And for me, I think really importantly is calling out anti-LGBTQIA plus comments. For example, there was a moment in time where I think teenagers were using gay in a really derogatory way, and that wasn't really acceptable. So those are some ideas. If anybody has ideas, feel free to put them in the chat box and we can share it with us as well. And I wanted to move on to professional now, and this is related towards our LGBTQIA plus colleagues, people in your department who you work with, people in your team, people in your practice, people, the people next to you in the uniform, What could you do as someone who doesn't belong to the LGBTQIA plus community? What could you do as a physiotherapy professional to signal and show to your colleagues that you are an ally? Yep. Great. Thank you for these shares, Haley, Layla. That's great. So I think for me, we go back to the staff room, and we go back to those water cooler moments and all the topics we identified earlier, What about if you're an ally? What about mentioning an LGBTQIA plus family and friend, Just casually dropping it into conversation in the staff room. What about casually mentioning a piece of news related to the LGBTQI plus community? Either something great like, oh guys, Pride is, like folks put, Pride is coming. Or if it's something horrific in the news, like, gosh, did you see those 2 lesbians who got beaten in the bus in Camden by a man? And bringing that material, into the staff room conversations. What about potentially considering adding pronouns to your email signatures? And if the staff are doing like night outs, team buildings, in-service trainings, all these things, what about going to a LGBTQIA plus bar? Just a thought. You know what I mean? Who's ever's in charge and has that power and privilege and who decides with the resources where the team go, perhaps that way. I don't know, maybe you could go see a drag show, or you could go see a musical theater show. There are many possibilities. Just showing how we can make our colleagues feel more included and belonging to the very profession that we all share. And as we are all identified, we could identify 5, 6 people we admire. You know what I mean? gosh, who openly identify as LGBTQI+. Then on a professional level, what could we do for our clients and patients to signal to them that we are inclusive? They can, as a member of the LGBTQIA+ community, they can belong and they can feel safe with me as their practitioner, with me as their therapist, with me as their healthcare worker. What are the things I could do? Okay, I'm seeing social nights are totally going to be organized. I'm loving it. I'm waiting for the invites, folks. You know what I mean? Yeah, so thanks, Layla. What about, we could have our name badges with our preferred pronouns on them as a department if we're using name badges and things like that. Some departments are already doing that, Think about the client sitting in your waiting room. Do you have anything in your waiting room that signals from the poster talking about, I don't know, COVID, to the poster talking about osteoporosis? Is it always a family, a male and a man and a woman with kids? All these subtle signals, all the posters that are produced, where is the preference? Are there patient information leaflets that are LGBTQIA+ inclusive? In your registration form, the one thing that almost every single department has a registration form, Does your registration form ask for a preferred pronoun? Does maybe they ask for the preferred name? Because what if someone is in transitioning and would like to be called something different that's not on their passport or driver's license? Yep, great. Teaching materials, yep, great. These are wonderful ideas. So you see, there's really like loads of ideas. And finally, place. What could we do in our society at large? And this is, I think, where visibility and representation really matters. Yep, there we go. I mean, we just had a talk now about pelvic health. And you're already there within pelvic health. There's rich material to have LGBTQIA+ inclusive material. Yep. Thank you for that. So in society, you know what I mean? Like artists, media, politicians, all these people with power and privilege. And I think we all have power and privilege in whatever domain, setting, sector we operate in. Yeah, thank you for that. Great share. So these are some of the resources. They are not exhaustive by any means. So I'm sure we all have tons, and maybe that's something when we tag on social media after we share all those resources so we can have. So there's a Google Docs, which is the second share there, which is I'm compiling an open source collative resource for everything from a TV show to a podcast to a documentary. And I'm just it's on the LGBTQI+ network page of the CSP. And every time someone can just contribute. So we have this beautifully abundant, rich resource that we know is housed on the CSP's LGBTQI+ network. And we go, oh, where do I go? Boom. We just go to that one thing and we go, okay, there's rich material there. And of course, there's guides to allyship. I'll be talking at VP UK later in the year. We'll be doing a networking session. MC is in the house. And right, that's it. If you want to know more, I run a man.i.cure project where we explore in depth in conversations, structural patriarchy. And there's all my contact details. Feel free to stay in touch. And I'm happy to take questions and have a discussion now.
Amazing. Sudhir, thank you so much. I don't know how everyone else is feeling right now, but I'm feeling pretty blown away. I feel challenged. I feel excited about the conversations we're having, the openness of everyone in the chat and things, and your energy, Sudhir, is just fabulous. So thank you so much. I think for me, the big one is allyship. And it would just be really good to hear your thoughts. Sometimes, Sudhir, I wonder about what I'm doing right and what I'm doing wrong, and you never want to make someone feel uncomfortable by saying the wrong thing. So, and I know a lot of things we hear from people is, how do you start the conversation? So do you just go in and say, hi, what pronouns do you use? Or, you know, have you got any thoughts? Because I know that's one we really commonly hear.
Yeah, you know, that's a great question, Hayley, and I love it because, you know, as physios, for example, okay, I have a bias to MSK outpatient, so I'm sorry for the biased scenario. Yeah, like when a client comes in with a problem, we go, oh, how can I help you? Where's your pain? We ask an open question. I don't go, oh, you're limping, you must have knee pain. So yes, open question is exactly the things like, how would you like to be called? What do you need to feel more comfortable in this space? You know, it's so interesting. All the pain research is all about danger and threat prevalence and all of that. And how do we make our patients feel safe? And it's interesting, there's research done on like, there's only really 2 questions clients subconsciously have in their minds when they come to see us. Can I trust this practitioner? AKA, do I feel safe? And then secondly, do they have the knowledge and skills to help me? So first, before they worried about this amazing course you did on the weekend, your 5 degrees that you have behind you, all they want to know is, how do I feel safe? And think about now, what makes you feel safe? Think about scenarios where you've been in, oh, you've gone on a face-to-face training course. You don't know anybody there. You don't think about, oh, do I ask the question to the tutor? Is it a stupid question? We've all felt unsafe. You know what I mean? Walking down a dark alley late at night. What makes me feel safe? If I was the patient, what would I like? And it's interestingly enough, sometimes it's not the things that we think of as a practitioner. You go into like a cool store and you go, wow, that's funky. I love the music. I love the lighting. I love the like, oh, that was a cool sound. It's so interesting what really makes us feel safe, you know? So to answer a short answer to your question, ask the person in front of you, what do you need from me to be safe in this space?
That's brilliant. I think you're right. It comes back to what you talked about earlier. It's that connection, isn't it? In whatever way, that's what it comes back to. Wonderful, thank you. A couple of things, recording again. So just a couple of things before we finish the session tonight.
Sudhir, could you just stop your share screen so I can share mine? Thank you. Lovely.
Perfect. Thanks, Mindy.
Sorry, I just moved to the right one. Hold on 1 second.
Perfect, thank you. So just a reminder to get your say in on the CSP's equality, diversity and belonging strategy. So I believe everyone's probably had an email about it, but if not, there's the link here. I don't know if we can pop it in the chat maybe as well, so we can direct people straight to it, Mindy.
Yes.
But obviously this is to help drive the strategy that the CSP are working on at the minute. It's really important that members are part of this, so please do go on to that and have your say as part of the strategy. That's really important. Thank you, Sudhir, for reminding us as well to add that in today.
Hayley, can I be very irritating as ever?
Yes, please do, MC.
Hayley, what a fabulous session you and Emma and Mindy have put together this evening, and Sudhir, always delightful as ever. Can I also encourage those people here this evening to look at their election manifestos and to choose wisely and think about the diversity of our council. I will say, slightly biased. I am council member, so I stand held to account, but I would love the increase in diversity, visual or non-visual, on council for the next 2 years. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, MC. Really important to get that across. And again, something that we can all be involved in. It's within all of our powers to affect. So please get involved. Okay, so just another plug, shameless plug. We've got another event coming up in this series. It is on Tuesday, the 20th of July, again at 7:30 p.m. And we're going to be discussing race and equality. So it's going to be another really good event. Really hope everyone can join us again, share it with your colleagues, and let's get the word out there. You're going to be sent some feedback forms after this as well. And the way we're trying to really encourage you to do this is that if you complete it, you get put into a draw to get a free ticket to VP UK. So please do the feedback. We've done this at every event, so we're really trying to get more members at VP UK with some free tickets. So make sure you complete the survey and you might win a free ticket. Okay, so thank you so much, everyone. Again, please do engage with us on social media. We hope you can join us for the next event. Let us know how it goes, and we look forward to seeing you at the next one. But just before we go again, a massive thank you to Sudhir for joining us, Ian, Emma for helping organise that, and as always, Mindy, who just keeps us in check and actually gets these events running because we couldn't do it without you. And to all the members, you are fabulous. Keep doing what you're doing, and we'll see you again soon.
When are we going out?
We have to go out. Emma and I have been discussing this there, and we've signed you up already. Night, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Bye all.
Bye.
Bye.